Breaking news here on the Golazo network. Following the dismissal of Jimmy Lozano after a disappointing Copa America tournament, the Mexican Football Federation have officially announced that Javier Aguirre will be the new Mexican national team head coach, with former El Tri captain Rafael Márquez as his assistant in what is called Project 2030. With the 2026 World Cup partially hosted in Mexico, the 65-year-old will return to the national team for his third stint, having previously led the nation in the 2002 and the 2010 World Cup. He will be joined on the touchline by former Barcelona defender Márquez, who played under him at 2 World Cups. Aguirre, who led the national team in 61 matches, winning 38 of them, will oversee the overall management of the team, while Márquez is said to focus on the development of young talent, having coached Barcelona's reserve team for the past 2 seasons. As a player, Márquez appeared in a joint record 5 World Cups for Mexico and won 12 trophies with Barcelona after making his European breakthrough with Monaco. He also played 3 seasons for the New York Red Bulls. The Mexican national team posted this to social media along with the announcement. The experience of Javier Aguirre and the career of Rafa Márquez and the proven global leadership of both together in the Mexican national team with a view to 2026 and in Project 2030. How can we not be excited? So it's official, Ian. Is this the right decision for the Mexican national team as they prepare to co-host the World Cup in 2026?
Yeah, it's a very interesting decision. Obviously, Aguirre comes back into the national team fold after tremendous success in Mallorca, and I was really impressed with the job that he did do. And at his age, what he does do is he brings a great deal of experience, understanding how to have success with the national team, and especially with Rafa Márquez as a player. So I'm really intrigued to see how it will work out as this partnership, and also maybe the master and the student now, where Márquez looks like he's going to take over the reins all the way through to 2030 World Cup after 26 is inevitably over. So Mexico are looking ahead, and I like that. The fact is that the players right now in the current group of roster that they have, it's not good enough. They have certainly got to a stage where they're a bit comfortable, performances haven't been good enough. You can't fault the determination and the passion from the Mexican players. They always seem to bring it, but at the same time, the quality's just simply not been there. So I'm hoping that Javier Aguirre comes in and he lights a fire within this group. Similar to what we're hoping will happen with the US national team, Mexico are in the same position. We know that the Mexican Federation have got a ton of money to spend and make sure that they get the right person. And they've gone back to a familiar face. So I really like this move. Obviously, the friendly games coming up in September will be something fun for us all to look forward to, especially that one against Canada with Jesse Marsch in charge. And Jesse's going to have a hell of a week that week, going up against the US and then going up against Canada. But I do like it. I was so impressed with what he did do at Mallorca, getting them to the final of the Cup, and the passion that he brought with that group of players was outstanding. You could clearly see every single player was playing for him, and it worked well. But does it always work well when you go backwards, when you go back and try to rejuvenate a federation, or you try to get results that you once did achieve with the national team? I can't say that it always does, Poppy, so I'm intrigued.
Speaking of group, where does he go in terms of the group of players that he selects moving forward? Because let's not forget as well, Jimmy Lozano, he picked a kind of a new look Mexico, didn't he? Left some big names off the roster. Does Aguirre go back to some of those big names?
Well, don't forget that Jimmy Lozano also had a record of 10, 4 and 7 with this Mexico side, right? He clearly wasn't a guy to get the best results with this group of players right now. I think Aguirre comes in and recognises that, okay, we might have to start to focus elsewhere. The more focal point for me would be the future of this Mexican national team, not necessarily between now and the World Cup, where of course, when you're hosting a World Cup, you've got to play well, you've got to impress, they have to be better than they have been. They've got enough talent in that group, they really do, but they haven't been playing well. However, I think it's more focused towards 2030 with Rafa Márquez and what he can do to change this group. Do they rotate? Right now, between now and the World Cup, they have some time, but not much time to be able to rotate and play around with some of the maybe dual nationals that could come into the Mexican national team fold as well, which of course we know all the rumours are out there. There's multiple players that they're after, and why not? Mexico understand they've got to be better than they have been because the quality that previously once there for the Mexican national team is just not at the same level. So therefore, you've got to go searching for that talent. And I think Rafa Márquez might just be the guy to go and search for it.
How confident do you feel that they will be in a good place come the 2026 World Cup? Here's some of the notable players, by the way, that you were talking about that could be called up for both teams.
Yep.
I mean, when you look at this, if you are one of those players, there's a lot of factors, isn't there, that you have to take in, but is Mexico an attractive national team to want to take over the US right now?
I think with this move, having Rafa Márquez as assistant up until 26 and then all of a sudden taking over, the longevity for Mexican Federation looks pretty promising right now. And Javier Aguirre is a bit of an icon when it comes to the Mexican national team. Let's not forget that. So all of a sudden it becomes much more attractive to players who are maybe considering which side do I go play for. I mean, they have enough talent at their disposal. I mean, you can see what they have there with Jimenez in particular. He is someone, whenever he pulls on a Mexican jersey, he's just not the same player as he is when he's playing in the Dutch league. This guy scores goals left, right and centre, and then playing for Mexico, not the same player. So can you turn talent like that into top performances week in and week out when you're playing for your national team in major competition or even in friendly games going up to the major competition? Then yeah, it could be a success.
Is it a concern for you though that there isn't real games of significance before the 2026 World Cup now for Mexico not having to qualify? Obviously you see the friendlies that they've got coming up, but they don't carry the same weight, do they, in a real test?
No, they don't. And in friendly games in particular, I think most people out there who've been watching our shows understand that I don't like friendly games because it's very difficult to learn a lot. But I think what you will see is that Mexico will go out of their way now to try and get much more stiffer opposition. The game against New Zealand, September 7th, of course, it's a nice introduction. The game against Canada will be another introduction into CONCACAF for Rafa Márquez as assistant coach, but also for Javier Aguirre going back up against a CONCACAF opponent and learn exactly where you're at, because this Canada group of players are excellent right now, and Jesse Marsch has got them playing well and believing in themselves once again. But what a strange state for CONCACAF right now. You have Canada, you have Mexico, and you have United States of America, who are 2 years away from hosting a World Cup. And you've got Jesse Marsch just taking over Canada, the US looking for a boss, and Mexico making a change from Jimmy Lozano all the way to Javier Aguirre. It's absolutely crazy to be in this state when a World Cup is right here on our doorstep for all of these federations. It's
with
crazy.
The three biggest teams making all of these changes. Just very quickly on Rafa Márquez, obviously, you know, he's been at Barcelona. We've seen what he's been able to do with that team. Is this the right decision for him to take on this role?
Well, I think anytime he ever pulled on that Mexican jersey, he played it with the purest of passion. This guy was a battler. I mean, I'll never ever forget the time that he put his knee into Kobe Jones's temple. I will never ever forget that challenge, and I hated him for it. What he did do in a Barcelona jersey was he showed his true class. He was an unbelievable footballer. And from my understanding, he's having success obviously learning his trade and being patient, waiting for the right opportunity. This type of a move away from Barcelona, where he was released from his contract, by the way, to even have the opportunity to go back to Mexico, you have to admire. So he's looking at this long term. He obviously has an understanding that there is a group of players that potentially can help him be successful onto the direction of 26 and then further forward into 2030. I love this appointment because we have the master and the student. Previously, he was obviously playing under Javier Aguirre. So now, to be sitting next to him on the bench, you'll have Javier Aguirre learning from Rafa Márquez because of the amazing talent he was out there on the pitch. Obviously sharing his ideas as to how you can go forward with this group of players from what he's learned at Barcelona, not necessarily just as a player in his unbelievable, illustrious career there, but also most recently as a manager and as a head coach with a lot of young, talented players. So this can only be a real positive for the Mexican Federation going forward, which right now means that US soccer, you are on the clock.
Does that add more pressure to US
it
soccer?
does. I mean, Javier Aguirre was plus 700 to take over the US men's national team job. So he was in the ranks there, clearly not necessarily mentioned as a favourite, and I can't imagine a Mexican ever taking over in this national team. But for me personally, I think it's it's really interesting to see that the US soccer are in this type of a position, and Canada and Mexico have already moved on.
Yeah, well, for Mexico, on paper, this looks like a good mix, doesn't it, with these two together. So just to recap, the Mexican Football Federation officially announced that Javier Aguirre will be the new Mexican national team head coach, with former El Tri captain Rafael Márquez as his assistant in what is called Project 2030. We've got more Golazo Network for you after this short break.